Welcome. You've splash landed into this Prosecco-laden podcast, straight into the woo-woo pool with the crew of Ohm-g. We're just a simple group of tragically imperfect and highly empathic BFFs, exploring a wide range of atypical topics with humor, grace, and curiosity. This is Ohm-g. Welcome. Not far from our home base in the Piedmont Triad of North Carolina is the city of Asheville. Asheville is home to the infamous Biltmore House, and the Woo crew took a field trip last week. We're here to report on it. You're here with the crew.
Ohm-g, the podcast.
This is Camille.
This is Chandra.
This is Brenda.
And this is Lynn.
So who wants to kick off this episode of our adventures at the Biltmore House? Because we went not just to see the house, but also to see the King Tut exhibit. Chilla is guarding us, by the way. If you hear a dog growling, it's not my stomach. Even though I am hungry, we got snacks downstairs.
The neighbors have the audacity to be on their own porch.
Right.
So it's one of those days, y'all, pollen and all.
And Chilla's line of sight, I mean, the audacity.
All up in her way.
Mm.
Okay, so let's talk about our trip. We did a little, we've been dealing with or working with the Hathors and having a lot of Egyptian symbology coming up within our group. And so we felt like it would be a really good opportunity to be able to go and see the King Tut exhibit and see what we felt. And the Biltmore House is also, Lynn's wearing her socks that she got there.
Her hieroglyphs.
Yep. It's an old house and there's a lot of history there and a lot of energy. So we're going to talk about what we felt in the house as well, kind of like we did up at Falling Waters. So who wants to go first?
Well, one of the things that stood out the most to me was just the synchronicities that we had just on the drive up there. We get in the car and the leader that keeps us on track and on schedule, Miss Camille, she's like typing it into the GPS and, here's the address, whatever, and it pops up and it's 2 hours and 22 minutes is your travel time. Well, of course it is.
Yep.
Of course it is. And just to stay on that theme, but several things we'll tell you about happened on the drive up there. But once we arrive, 2 hours and 22 minutes later, we drive up to the guard gate and they're scanning our tickets and we look at the clock and it's 11:11.
Of course it is.
Of course it is.
Can't make that shit up, y'all.
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm.
Oh, and what else did we see?
This got overshadowed by the fact, another story we'll tell you about later, but I looked at my watch when we finished that because we did the house tour, we did the shopping, we did the winery. So everything that happened before the King Tut exhibit, we were walking out of the winery at 3:33.
Oh, that's so funny.
I love it.
And also on the way up there, remember we ran into the vultures. There were like this little small area where we were driving down the highway and it was on the right and on the left. There were like these groups. I mean, they were eating dead animals, obviously, but it was like, okay, I feel like that's an animal message. And then when we get to the King Tut, lo and behold, what do we see? Who wants to tell that? The vultures on the...
On his helmet.
On his helmet. There's the vulture and the cobra.
The death mask is not the right word, but the thing that's iconically King Tut, the golden head dress that the mummy wore. And the vulture was the symbol of the northern region of Egypt.
And the cobra was for
the southern.
Yeah. So, and also the cobra is representative of being the protector of the underworld too, and like to help ease you into death. And so
Luckily,
anyway,
we saw no cobras.
Exactly. No cobras, no snakes. But it was really interesting.
But we did see the turkeys.
We did. That's another story.
Just kidding. Kind of.
Oh, not the turkey vultures.
Well, but that's how the 3:33 got overshadowed because we were all still laughing at the fact that we saw a gaggle of turkeys like out in the field as we walked into the winery. And about the time I got the final sip of Chardonnay in in my mouth. Lynn lets out with her gobble, 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 and wine comes out my nose. So
Chandra had a seizure.
I did. I had a turkey seizure in the winery.
So classy. We some classy witches.
Embracing our inner children.
Yes, we had fun.
Inner turkey. But
Yes.
anyway, I will say this. As far as the Biltmore house itself goes, this was my third trip there. I always feel something strongly, as I think most people do when they visit that place. But the entire day, especially on the grounds, it was like my head was floating above my body. It was very, very strange. It was not scary. It wasn't alarming. It was actually almost soothing. But it was just bizarre and literally on the grounds of the Biltmore.
Yeah, it's a different experience going there with your other woo friends than it is if you go with somebody who's non-woo, I think, because I've been there quite a few times and I always felt stuff in the basement area.
Mm-hmm.
Like I always felt like there was some different energy down there. But this time it's like I felt it in different pockets in the house too. And there's so many people in and out of there. Like how much residual energy do people leave whenever they come and go? But I think in the billiards room or like the men's smoking room, whatever, I saw people in there. Like they were like an imprint maybe of a time when they spent time in there smoking and drinking and playing pool and
that's
cards.
Where we found Jesus.
Yes, we did. We found the little statue of Jesus hiding.
A little Lego plastic Jesus statue in the corner by this big velvet curtain.
Right on the right of the windowsill, watching every move we made.
What would Jesus do? He wouldn't be in there smoking and drinking, y'all.
He might be.
He might have been.
He did turn water into wine.
That's right.
So,
Water into whiskey in
he
there.
might have been just in there passing out Jesus juice. You don't know.
Could have been. He could have been.
Okay, so who wants to go talk about their experience in the house before we talk about King Tut stuff?
Well, the first thing, because Lynn was telling the story of like her last visit there, and she was talking about having experiences with Cornelia and Cornelia being very, very present. And actually, right as we kind of first walked in to the house, we were kind of going toward that billiards, kind of like men's lounge room. And as we went around that corner, I felt something like around my neck. It almost either felt like a huge collar or like someone was, you know how someone will come up from behind and put their arms around your shoulder and kind of like, give you a hug from behind. Comforting, but like unexpected, but still not unpleasant or unwelcome. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's very much how, and it was just kind of like a cool kind of like shiver kind of feeling. I was just like, hey, Cornelia.
Oh, when we came out
come
of that,
come on with us. We're walking around.
when we came out of that space, there was a picture hanging on the wall, and I don't know who it was because I didn't look. But the woman had on this high collared dress in the picture, and that's how I had envisioned it. Whenever Chandra was talking about the feeling that she had at the back of her neck, I felt like it was like a collar or some sort of coat or something like that. That was up the back of your head.
Well, and I mean, if you think about it, like when you're out in the cold and you flip your collar up and pull it around, that's kind of what it feels like. It's like a big, like a hugging kind of comforting, and that's definitely what it felt like.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I've been there. It was just my second trip there, but I don't know if it was because there were so many people there, like the energy in the basement, like y'all, I was elbowing people like, excuse me, get out of my way. Excuse me, because I needed to just get out. And I don't know if it was because the spirits in there were stirred up or if there was just so many people that the energy was too overwhelming.
It's a claustrophobic area. The ceiling is very low compared to the rest of the house.
And it's a lot darker.
Dense.
It's a lot darker. I mean, just because it is basement-y than the rest of the house. But yeah, the hallway going through, because there's an underground pool. There's actually, I mean, it's the largest single family home in the country. So, there's a bowling alley in the house and there's a huge pool in the basement. But the hallway going through the changing rooms always made me feel very uneasy. And it was like I was always afraid to look into the changing rooms. There was like something that was, and I guess maybe that's just the feeling of like, obviously women who were changing down there probably wouldn't have felt as comfortable just because like people walking by hearing noises right outside the changing room. And I mean, it was a much more modest time. So, I mean, kind of like the feeling of somebody could look in any moment kind of feeling was probably going on in the room. And I guess I was that's kind of all I've always attributed it to, is like somebody afraid somebody was going to see them changing. And I was like respecting that by feeling like I shouldn't look in to those, even though they're set up to be viewed now, which they wouldn't have been back then. But
she don't want to see a naked ghost.
I don't. Yeah, I want to see a ghost, but they can be dressed.
I always wonder, though, when we visit places like that, if we are actually looking into a parallel lifetime. Like, because everything, everywhere, all at once.
Right.
So what if we're walking through there and they're still living on that timeline and you're just picking up on their energy?
Right.
Mind blown.
Something to think about.
Or if it was part of my parallel reality and I'm like, that's how I felt there. So now I'm mirroring the other side of that now that I'm on kind of like the other side of that veil.
Could be.
Yeah. But that gave me chills.
I also had the thought that when we were walking through there and you were talking about that maybe people would sneak off into those rooms.
Oh, yes.
And do nefarious things.
Little clandestine meetings, which we do know that kind of went on because we read the story about the ladies of the evening.
Right.
That was probably me. I'm just kidding.
Rich and powerful homes don't have that stuff going on, Lynn. Come on.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So anybody else want to talk about anything that happened in the house?
Well, then there was the pool room itself. So that room has always, and
I just ran through it.
I've always attributed it to vertigo because there's a big hole in the middle of the floor, and and you walk in and it's 20 feet to the bottom of this hole, and I always thought, I'm afraid of heights. I get vertigo, but it was more than that this time. That room was highly charged.
The first time that I went to the Biltmore, and I was with not y'all, but some other friends, and I walked. I know, it's unbelievable, isn't it?
And she'll admit it right to our face.
I know, it's unbelievable. Anybody wants to hang out with me. But anyway, we walked into the pool room and I stopped dead in my tracks and I looked around and I looked at my friend and I said, somebody drowned in this pool. And she was like, what? And I said, no, somebody drowned in this pool. I got to get out of here. And I left and we did some research, and it's not documented because, they try to hide stuff back then, but it was rumored that a child drowned in that pool. And I don't know, there's no evidence that happened, but I believe the rumor's true because I picked it up the first time I went in there. And so every time when I went in there the second time, I was just like, no, thank you.
And when I had told Lynn about that being like the one room that made me the most uneasy in the house, she told me about that story. And so, of course, being the witch that I am, I go in that room, and even though I'm freaked the F out, I tune in because that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard halfway down, something to that effect. And the feeling that I got is like, I don't know that this is the literal translation, but the feeling that I got was like somebody got halfway to him before they realized they weren't going to be able to help.
I also remember from the first tour I did there, where you have the little headset that tells you about each room. They mentioned something about the pool room, how it was remarkable because they later found that the pool lights were put in incorrectly. It had something to do with the AC versus DC current. And they said that because of this error, anyone in the pool could have been totally electrocuted at any time. It was like a huge flaw. And that kind of blows my mind. So that's some weird energy going on in there because electricity, y'all.
We're going to light you up.
And it's a massive pool, too. I forget how many gallons of water.
Cavernous.
Wasn't it 22,000 or I feel like it was something like that. Maybe somebody should Google that.
It was a lot.
I just picked my phone up and it's 1122.
Well, and I just said 22,000 gallons. Y'all, I love life. I love it whenever we get all these little synchronicities, and numbers have been really popping up a lot lately, but that's another.
Everywhere.
44s for me.
44s this month. Well, it's 4 energy months. So
right.
But Go ahead.
70,000 gallons.
70,000. I was way off. I was way off.
I mean, it's over 10 feet, 15 feet deep at the deepest part.
Right.
And you walk into the door and you're standing at the precipice of a huge hole in the ground. But this morning, I was out with my little doggy taking his morning constitutional. And I was looking around and I noticed that the clouds were like moving super fast this morning. And so I kind of just, looked around and watched them because that's cool. And there was only 3 or 4 clouds in the sky that I could see. And one of them was much, much smaller than like the others. And so I looked at it and it looked like a bird with like when it flips its wings back, like to take another stroke in flight. And I was like, I thought in my head, oh, that cloud looks like a bird. And as soon as I thought the word bird, I heard bird of prey, vulture. And I was like, that makes sense.
Because we're going to be talking about this today.
About the vultures, yeah.
Very interesting.
As agnostic as I am, those little things I like to call God taps.
Yeah.
Where the universe just kind of reminds you, we are one. We got you. We see you.
And we're there with you. We know what's going on.
Well, and you're on the right path. Like, it's like little signposts that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. So, should we talk about the King Tut?
Do it.
Let's do it.
It was so intriguing to me to see all of the head gear and all of the jewelry and things that were so intricately done with the inlay of the lapis and turquoise. And I think it was carnelian. And I just found that so fascinating and beautiful. And Lynn, when we got there, we were in a little line to go get in. And you could look through the door and you could see like the gold chariot.
Yeah.
And Lynn got really emotional. Would you like to talk about your emotions, Lynn?
Because we know that's your comfort zone, talking about those emotions.
Right?
It's exactly where I love to be, is to talk about emotions. Yeah. As we stood there and I looked through the door, it's almost like I can't even describe how I felt. It was like this wave of emotion came over me, and it was like a longing and a sadness at the same time. And I've seen me and Brenda in a past life in Egypt. And I think I might have been tapping into that other lifetime. And it just made me super, maybe homesick. Wistful. Yeah. But also longing for a place that I've never been to in this lifetime, which is kind of weird. Like, somebody please come take me to the pyramids. Please.
But I think we all kind of felt that in different spots of like, oh, that's familiar. And that feeling of nostalgia, for lack of a better word, that remembrance, that kind of like calling back, like a piece of you still there or is there right now, because it's all happening at the same time. But yeah, I felt that too. Not that strongly, but there were certain things that I looked at where it felt more familiar than others. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's interesting.
I also feel like there's a lot of like the mythology or the stories behind it that I wish they would have talked about more, like the real, more woo related things, because they kept it very fact-based.
Yes. Palatable to the masses.
Yeah. But I would have loved to have heard more about the symbology of the things that they were wearing, and this more of the symbology of the vulture and the cobra. And because I felt like there was a lot that we didn't get to hear about that I was really interested in.
Yeah, I combed over everything looking for anything related to Hathor, the goddess, and there was nothing in there. And I was sorely disappointed in that.
Yeah. Well, and I noticed because I did, of course, I went down a rabbit hole, y'all, before we went in. And she was represented in lots of the, like,
artifacts.
In the artifacts, they had a full-size painting of her and Tut on the south wall on the inside of his tomb. And she was handing him an ankh, kind of like a key, or almost not a handcuff, but like she had the circle part of the ankh toward him, like, put your hand through this, like, take this as a handle. I'm going to pull you into the afterlife. And when you're reading And so they had a replica of that painting of that wall, and you're reading under it, and it was like a deity of the underworld.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was just completely glossed over.
Right.
Well, and they had I think I remember seeing like the golden, I think it was it the cow with the
The cow,
horns with the
mhm.
sun over it? And I was like, oh, that's Hathor.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But there was no mention of Hathor. And so,
Everything I saw,
mhm.
when it talked about what that artifact was, it just said a deity of the underworld.
Yeah.
Which is disappointing, right?
Right. Well, it was disappointing to us in particular, but I'm like, but 99.99% of the population, the word Hathor isn't going to mean
Right.
It
So-
doesn't
so-
mean anything to them.
to them. So, but so
Right.
why leave it out? So
Mhm.
why gloss over it?
Or, I think they should have put it in there so that people would study. Uh-oh, what happened?
I know exactly why they left it out. Because Hathor is the divine feminine, and that's what the Hathors represent. They come in with that feminine love and that kind of like grandmotherly caretaking, here to help you, here to help you heal. So why wouldn't they gloss over the divine
Mm.
feminine?
Bingo.
That makes perfect sense to me.
Patriarchy bastards.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Because it was about King Tut, right?
Yeah.
right.
The masculine energy.
Right. The king. So
Right.
why bring any divine feminine in on that?
And the archaeologist and his benefactor who put up the money to make all of the discoveries and the opening of the tomb possible. One thing that I did notice, even though I didn't get any really strong feelings in the exhibit, I had a little surge of anger come up when we were looking at all of the really ornately decorated outer tomb, the gold and all of the stones, because there would be another tomb within that, another tomb within that, then the sarcophagus, then something else before you get down to the actual remains. And it struck me, and I know this is across all cultures, even our own, it struck me and made me a little mad, all of the care and design and time and ritual that went into preserving this dead body of a ruler when, people were enslaved en masse and starving. And it made me mad at the waste for someone's remains versus what could be done
Mm-hmm.
in a society. But anyway, that's my moment.
And here we are again.
Here we are again.
Because we never learn.
Right.
But one of the things that I noticed is there were 4 tombs and there were 4 sarcophagi. Is that the right?
I like it.
Sarcophaguses. And 4 is the number. 4 is the number of leadership,
Mhm.
and 4 is also the number of building structures, building processes, building foundations. So it was very much about keeping that ruler
Relevant.
king mentality, continuing to build the structures that whole ultimate divine ruler kind of thing was built upon. I mean, that clicked for me. I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense. The other thing is we were walking through and reading some of the different inscriptions and everything under some of the exhibits. I don't know if anybody that's ever been to the Biltmore, as you've walked through, if you've noticed this, there are some paintings in the house of Egypt. They're watercolor paintings of like Egyptian
Mm-hmm.
landscapes.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was Cornelia's daughter-in-law that did those paintings. The inscription said she was an amateur Egyptologist. So she actually took trips to Egypt, and she's one of the ones that brought a lot of, if not relics, that aesthetic back to Biltmore. And I was like, well, so of course it was Cornelia that was all up in your stuff, Lynn, because like that's the connection kind of from us to what has happened there to ultimately viewing that exhibit, which I found that very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Little spark of female independence
Mm-hmm.
in a time like that.
Mm-hmm.
And how connected we all are still, whether we're
Physically
living,
here or
breathing.
not.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That we're still existing, or some part of our consciousness is still existing in the realms around us. So if you feel so obligated or intrigued or interested like we were, then I recommend it. It's expensive. So
It's going to be there for a while.
yeah.
And I just want to say about it was expensive for a ticket, but you know how much a ticket cost to Egypt cost?
Who wants to fly right now?
I'm
anyway?
just saying. And so I did hear a lot of people talking about the expense of it. And yeah, it was a little bit expensive, but it was cheaper than flying to Egypt, finding a hotel room, a guide, somebody that speaks the language. I mean, I would say, even though they're all replicas, they're made to scale.
They're made to, well, and the craftsmanship. I mean, it was very impressive.
Yeah,
the things that you were looking at. It's a lot of the stuff you would never know it was not the real thing.
You wouldn't know, and because they made them, the Egyptian craftsmen made them, so they made them with such care that they are exact replicas of the original artifacts, which are too fragile to travel these days.
Right.
But if anybody wants to take me to Egypt, my phone number.
Won't you give to our cause? Because we really want to go.
We have lots of places we want to go.
I'm also going to say this about Asheville in general. As a lot of you know, that town was not decimated, but greatly affected by the recent floods, hurricanes, weather, and they took a pretty big hit. They could definitely use your tourist dollar. There's still a lot of wonderful things to see, great restaurants, and of course the lovely Biltmore. So 5 stars, highly recommend.
Yeah, I would love to see them bounce back.
Well, but how far they've come in 6 months. I mean, probably 85 to 90% of stuff was open. I mean, the damage was still very visible and very palpable, but you could still maneuver around the town very easily. I mean, they've done a tremendous amount of work in 6 months. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, that wraps up another episode with the Ohm-g podcast and the ladies up here in the attic with the puppy dogs. We hope that you are all taking good care of yourself, love each other, love yourself, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Absolutely.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Peace out.
Thank you for joining us today. Please follow and subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a review. It's so easy to do and such a huge help for us. We appreciate your interactions so much. Want to join us at our table? Make sure to check out our YouTube channel and join our Facebook community. If you've enjoyed this content and wish to support us, take a look at our Patreon page. All information and links will be in our podcast description. Catch you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM. Women's voices amplified.